Thank you so much for joining today's Welcome Wednesday. My name is McKenna, and I'm one of the graduate assistants for academic advancement programs. And today we have Dawn, and she's here as the Associate Director for Educational Partnerships at ETS. And today she's going to be talking about the GRE Genius Guide and get to know the GRE General Tests and Services. Feel free, if you guys could please scan the QR code or click the link to check in. And then feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. And at the very end, we will go through those questions. So thank you all. Go ahead, Dawn. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, McKenna. Thanks, Heba. Thanks to the academic advancement programs at UCF. I get to do this every year. And I say get to, not have to, because this is the part of my job I probably love the most. I spent about 15 years as an admissions counselor, undergraduate, graduate admissions on college campuses. I kind of stuck my ground in the South, Georgia Southern. I was at Indiana University. Y'all don't consider that South. I didn't either at the time. So this is kind of my bread and butter of what I do and have done for a career for the past 20 some odd years. But I really love working with students. So my role at ETS is really I get to be an individual where I work with students. So I help you to better understand the GRE. And that's my role today is I'm going to go through this kind of large slide deck. I'm going to go through it quickly, but here's the key. I will be sharing this out at the end so that you have this information, you have the materials so that you're prepared. But the other side of my role is that I work with graduate programs. So I work with faculty, chairs, deans, and we work with them to help them set guidelines for holistic admissions, for enrollment, for recruitment, that side as well. Now, I do have to tell you, I have a 13-year-old. He committed to a different school in Florida. We live in Northwest Florida, by the way. We live in Destin. My son committed to a different school in Florida a couple of years ago. He has now changed his allegiance to UCF because he is a competitive paintball player. And we have been told that you all have an extremely good competitive paintball team. So apparently we are now going to be knights, I've been told. So I'm even more excited to be here today. So this is all the things we're going to cover in today's session. And I now have credit with my son. Thanks to you all for letting me be here. So let's talk about who uses GRE scores. So when we talk about GRE scores, we're going to talk about the programs and then we're going to talk about you and why you need to consider them. So GRE scores are accepted for graduate schools. So when I say graduate schools, think about graduate programs, health-related programs, the liberal arts programs, STEM engineering programs, but also business schools and law schools. So JD programs, all kinds of different specialty law programs, but MBA programs and specialty business programs as well. A lot of students don't know that. The GRE itself is accepted on parity. On parity means just as level as the GMAT for business school. The GRE is also accepted on parity or equal to the LSAT for law school. So if you're considering law school, business school, or other graduate programs, the GRE is really a great step for you. Who else uses it other than programs are a lot of organizations and foundations that offer funding like scholarships. So they use those scores as well to sort of make sure that you're ready to take that next step to your graduate education. So let's talk about why programs use scores. Well, there's so many reasons why a program may require, recommend, or even have GRE scores as optional. Where I want you to focus is on that very first orange box. The GRE was truly intended to make sure that applicants to programs are ready to take on the rigors of graduate school. That's it, y'all. That was the entire intent of creating the GRE in the beginning, to make sure that you're academically prepared for the rigors of graduate school. Graduate school, you can ask McKenna, being a GA herself, it's a lot more complex than undergraduate school. There's a lot more time commitment. There's a lot more thought, critical thinking. The complexity is just completely different, and you can't understand it until you actually get into it and experience it yourself. So the GRE is really just an indicator to make sure, hey, you're ready to go. You're ready to take that next step. Another reason is to help avoid unconscious bias, meaning if I apply to a program and you apply to a program, I'm not giving a specific favor because of an undergraduate institution that I attended. It's supposed to level the playing field. Perhaps I have a letter recommendation from someone who won a Nobel Peace Prize. Should I be given considerate admission consideration because my letter of recommendation is a little more popular than yours? Shouldn't be. So it helps to really alleviate any kind of unconscious bias, to be a fairer point of a common measure of a student's ability to gauge academic preparedness. It was never meant to be put on a pedestal. It was never meant to be more important than GPA or anything else. It's just one piece of the admission packet. So, how can it help you as an applicant, especially if you're looking at a program that may be GRE optional? Well, the first thing to know is that the GRE really does give you a competitive edge. You may not know this, but about 81% of GRE test takers are accepted into their graduate program where they actually submit their scores, even if it is test optional. And this was a survey of students that were accepted back in 2024. So if a program doesn't accept scores, students are accepted at a higher rate, even if they submit those scores. Because what a GRE score does is it helps support your transcripts. So they look at those scores, they look at your transcripts, they're like, yep, two pieces of evidence that show me beyond the shadow of a doubt that this student is academically prepared. So I mentioned that, supporting mechanisms, making sure that applicants are ready, but really it kind of like just leaves nothing on the table, right? It's really to demonstrate giving the application reviewers or the committee more confidence in the materials that you are presenting. I meet with graduate deans. I meet with admissions faculty all the time. I meet with admission committees. I was one. Do you know one of the things we talk about all the time? Grade inflation. We talk about GPA inflation all the time. We understand that there are different scales whenever it comes to grades. Do you know one of the other things we talk about is we cannot look at a transcript from two different institutions and really justify one institution being more rigorous than another institution. 3.9 is a 3.9. 3.7 is a 3.7. When I did admissions years ago for PA programs, I would have students very upset with me because they went to a more academically rigorous institution. I'm sorry, but there is no rule in the Department of Education that states that your institution is more academically rigorous than another institution. Simply doesn't exist. That would be me given a bias to you because you think your institution is more academically rigorous. It doesn't exist. So we have to really look at it as a common measure. So another reason is depending on graduate school, you may be trying to decide if you're ready or not. So another reason to take the GRE is to just kind of help you decide, am I ready to take on this challenge? It's kind of like that internal decision of, do I want to go to grad school now? Do I want to take a year? Do I had this internship or I had this work opportunity? Kind of just helps you to determine if it's the right choice for you. And then there's so many different resources available. So this is one of the students that took, and I don't know everyone's background on the call, so that's why I decided to share this one. This is an individual who English was not his first language. And by studying the vocabulary and by studying for the verbal reasoning, his actual English vocabulary improved while he was studying to take the test. So it gave him even more confidence when going to grad school. And then finally, it can help you stand out if there are assistantships or scholarship committees that are reviewing your application. In fact, 57% of GRE test takers who submit scores were competitive in applying for a few of those awards that are out there, and they're hard to come by. Okay, so let's talk about the test itself and where it can be taken. You can take the GRE in an authorized test center or you can take it at home. Regardless, the test experience is the same. If you decide to take it at a test center, they're available at a continuous basis worldwide. Typically, you want to schedule your test. It says a few days out. I always say a few weeks out. And here's the reason why. They have business working hours, right? So if you know you want to take it on a certain day and time, you want to give yourself a couple of weeks so that you can schedule that specific day and time. What I love about a test center is that they're responsible for giving you everything you need to be successful technology wise. They're going to have the computer, they're going to have the keyboard, the mouse, they give you scratch paper, they give you a quiet environment, they give you strong internet and broadband. You also have security, so there are proctors that are walking in the room behind you if you have technical issues. Now, at home, you can test 24 hours a day. You do have to schedule it about 24 hours in advance. There are proctors that are available, so you will have someone who is watching you whenever you are testing. There's also a lot of AI that is watching you in the background as well. There's some gaze technology, making sure you're not using listening devices. The test taker, you yourself, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have all of the specifications that you need. So we're talking technology, we're talking location, we're talking internet to be successful. So if you have a laptop from, umpteen years ago that sounds like a jet engine whenever it starts up, that thing may not support taking an online test, may not support, a broadband, a good, strong internet. So there's a link at the bottom. Do you see the test taker schedule? You can go there and there's some specifications that you can look at to make sure that your computer system, if you decide to test at home, meets all of those requirements. So just so that you know whether you take it at home or you take it at a test center, the choice is truly yours. So where you decide to test is a personal preference. But anything that you decide is your decision. I can tell you that most test takers still choose a test center. That's primarily due to just having some quiet space, right? Having a space that they can think and they can focus on the test, or the fact that they maybe don't have a really good Wi-Fi signal or something wherever it is that they're testing, whether it's an apartment or at home. But the choice is yours. So, regardless of where you decide to test, the test experience is the same, and how you study for it is also the same. You can answer any question within a section, and we're going to look at the sections in just a second, in any order. So, if you find a question, let's say you're in the verbal reasoning section, you come across a question, it's really tough, you're like, I'm kind of stuck on this one. You can mark that one and come back to it later, or you can skip it and go ahead. There's a review screen. I'm going to show you what that looks like here in just a moment. That review screen will show you the questions that you skipped or the questions you marked because you just kind of weren't unsure of the answer. It'll also show you something you may have skipped over, but you can always return to those. You can review and change answers in a particular section, which you can't do on a lot of other standardized exams. If you look at the bottom there, when you get to the quantitative reasoning section, the math section, there is an on-screen calculator. That is the only calculator you can use within the GRE, the one that's provided there. If you take the GRE and you decide to take it multiple times, some students, usually domestic students, so students within the US, the average is taking it twice. Not everyone does, but the average is taking it twice. Then you can send only your best scores to schools if you want. That's completely up to you. And here's the best thing. Scores are good for 5 years. Now, why does that matter? I don't know exactly where everyone is in their undergraduate career right now, but I can share with you that the majority of students take the GRE their junior or their senior year of their undergraduate. So if the scores are good for 5 years, then those scores are valid. So within that 5 year time frame, you have some time to decide when you want to go to grad school, since those scores are valid for that amount of time. They stay within your ETS account or you can go ahead and send them to the schools that you decide you want to send them to. They all have different student information systems where they can retain that information for an amount of time, or you can just leave them in your ETS account, which is your online account. That is completely up to you. But the good thing is that they are valid for 5 years. So that gives you some time to think about when you think you want to start grad school. So now let's look at the sections and how the test itself is structured. There are three individual sections to the GRE. Three individual sections really means that the GRE consists of three individual tests. There's analytical writing, verbal reasoning, and quantitative reasoning. Now, I always list analytical writing first because regardless of when or where or how you take the GRE, you will always experience the analytical writing section first. Verbal and quantitative could come in any random order, but you'll always get the writing section first. The writing section consists of one essay task, and you'll have 30 minutes to complete it. Now, verbal reasoning or quantitative reasoning, again, you would receive those in any order. Now, if you get verbal reasoning second, do you see where it says there's a section 1 and a section 2? You would receive both sections at the same time. The reason why there's two sections is because that plays into how the test is scored. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation today, you finish analytical writing, your next section pops up and it's verbal reasoning. You'll go through both sections of verbal reasoning. There won't be any kind of a break. It'll be seamless. You'll go from one section directly into the other. When that section is completed, then you'll finish your final section for this example and conversation would be quantitative reasoning. That means that the total testing time is just under 2 hours. And that also means that there are no breaks for the GRE. If you need a break, if you take medication during a certain time, that's an accommodation that you can request prior to your testing date. So I mentioned scoring. If you remember, verbal and quantitative have those two different sections. And that's because the GRE is called section level adaptive. So if you think of those two different sections, the second section on verbal and quantitative, that content is determined by the system, determined by the testing system, based upon how well you performed on the first section. And I'm going to show you an infographic that really sort of, I think, explains it even better. Regardless of how well you do, all questions contribute equally to your final score. And your final score is determined by the total number of questions you get correct, as well as the level of difficulty for each section. Now, I do have a little myth buster here for you as well, because some people just don't know this when they go into it. And that is, there's no points deducted if you get a question incorrect. So if you just come across a question that you're like, oh my goodness, I am so stumped on this, I'm lost, for some reason, my brain is just, and the time is clicking, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm running out of time. Don't leave it blank because blank would mean you can't get any points for it. Not deducted, but you can't get any points for it. I would always recommend taking an educated guess because you could possibly get it right and receive points for it. And if you do get it wrong, they won't be deducted. But please don't leave anything blank. Go ahead and take that best educated guess because it could work in your favor. So this here's the busiest infographic I've ever seen in my entire life. We are going to start on the left-hand side and we're going to work across. So we're going to start right here if you see me moving my cursor. So section 1, again, verbal and quantitative. Whether you're in verbal or you're in quantitative, section 1 always starts medium difficulty. So there's a few difficult questions, a few that are easier. So we call that moderately challenging content, okay, for section 1. If you perform well, then your section 2 content will be more challenging. If you perform moderately well, you guys can follow along. Section 2 is moderately challenging. If you perform less well, section 2 is less challenging. Here's what you won't know. When you're testing, there's no break, There's no indication that you are moving from section one to section two. The reason being is because that would be very distracting and that would cause you a lot of anxiety. You won't know when you're moving from section one into section two. It's going to be completely fluid. But what you do need to know is that is what the adaptive scoring is doing in the background. So section two is going to be based upon how you perform in section one. And then in section two, when you get more challenging content, the questions that you get correct based on both section one, section two leads to the higher test scores. Moderately challenging content, you can see here, leads to the medium test scores, and less challenging content from section one into section two are the lower test scores. So a scoring scale for verbal and quantitative, two separate scores, are on a scoring scale of 130 to 170. So section one, moderately challenging. Let's say you just have a rough day. Let's say you just didn't study at all. Let's say you just thought, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to go in cold, see how I do. Let's say you didn't do very well. And let's say section two is less challenging. Then that's how your score would be on the on the lower side because you received less challenging content and you got less questions correct. But let's say in section one, you did well, you performed well. Section two, you performed well, you got more correct. That leads to the higher scoring scale. So when you take the GRE, since it's three separate tests, there are three separate scores or three independent scores. These are reported to you and reported to the schools or the programs that you wish to apply to. So if you look at analytical writing is on a scoring scale of 0 to 6 in half point increments, meaning you could get a 3.5 or a 5.5. Verbal reasoning is on a scoring scale of 130 to 170 in full or whole point increments, meaning you could get a 157 or 145. Quantitative is a third and final score, again on a scoring scale of 130 to 170, but again, it could be full whole point increments. So you could get, 162. So that's how there's three independent scores that are on your score report. And there's also three independent scores that we report to the individual schools that you decide you're going to apply to. So we talked about the review screen. I'm going to show you that next. I'm going to show you the design of the test and keep the questions coming. I see the chat moving. We're going to get to those at the end, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to motor through and let McKenna manage that process. At the top of your screen when you're testing, there is a control bar. And that's where you can pull up the calculator. You see the calc, that'll bring up the calculator for the quant section. You can mark, you see the mark button there. That's where you can mark a question because you just want to go back and check it before you finish. Review brings up the review screen. I'm going to show you next. There's help. Help as if like you can't remember the directions and you just want to bring those up again. And then there's back and next. It's where you can go back a question or skip ahead a few questions. If you decide to review, that brings up the review screen. So the review screen really helps you just kind of figure out where you are. I want to show you a couple of things. Number one is when you're in a section, so you see you're on question 12 of 12, you're going to see the clock that's running here. So for a particular section, let's say you have 42 minutes. When you start that section, it'll start counting down from 0. If you're the type of person where the thought of that counting down is completely stressful for you, you can hide the time right here. But the last 5 minutes, the timer will come up so that you just know you need to start wrapping it up. That is the time that I recommend that you come to the review screen. I do not recommend answering a question, checking the review screen. That's a time waste right there. Wait until that last 5 minutes, get through all of the questions, and then come back and check your review screen. Your review screen is going to tell you what you've answered, what you've marked. So number 2 is an example of, okay, I answered this one, but I marked it. Oh, that's because I wanted to go back and check my answer. So you can go to question. When you click this, it will say 2. You could go back and check it. If you look at number 6, it's incomplete. Incomplete means maybe it was multiple choice and it said select one or more. and you skipped it completely, or you only selected one, not the one or more. And then you see number 8, you didn't answer at all. And number 12, you're on that one right now. So the review screen is really to help you whenever you're wrapping up at the end, not something I would spend a lot of time on during the actual test itself. So these are some FAQs that we get a lot. I get this question all the time, like what should I even aim for? Like what is a good score? Because individual graduate programs all have different admission requirements, it's really important that you speak to them directly. I get it. You're like, oh my gosh, I want to bug them. They're so busy. Should I even contact them? 100%, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you this from firsthand experience. If you reach out to a graduate program and they don't make time for you, if they're not going to make time for you as an applicant or they're going to make time for you as an enrolled student, that's what I always say. So if you're reaching out to that admissions person or you're reaching out to that faculty and you're like, I'd love to be a part of your program, now make sure you're not pestering them, right? You don't want to send them 5 emails in a week asking individual questions. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I get a waiver? Can I get a scholarship? They expect graduate students to act like adults, so we have to, present ourselves well. But if you're asking questions after you've done some research, so do some research on the program online, look at their program, look at the information, and you still have questions, reference that. I've been researching your program online. I found XYZ information and I find it intriguing. This perfectly aligns with what I want to do for a career. Then ask your question. Most programs will tell you kind of what a range is they're looking for, not just on GRE, but GPA, what they're looking for in a statement of purpose, what they're looking for in an internship or research information. They're looking for colleagues just as much as they are for students to fill seats in their graduate programs. A graduate student is a different relationship than an undergraduate student. They really do look at, and McKenna and I were kind of joking about this earlier. I used to hire graduate students all the time when I was on campus, and they really are more like a colleague than they are a student. There is some there's still a professional relationship there, but there is this like, oh, I've got some ideas. Can I run this by you? There's some brain share. There's some teamwork and collaboration that goes beyond a lot of what you get at an undergraduate experience. So reach out to them, ask the information, but you have to do your homework first. Don't expect to reach out to them and say, hey, what are your admission requirements? I wouldn't answer that either, especially for a graduate student. The second tip I can give you that's not on the screen here, please do not have your parents reach out. When I ran graduate programs for years at Indiana University, I would still have parents reach out on their students' behalf, and they would say, my student is a senior, they're graduating this year, but they're so busy. They're working, they're finishing up, they're graduating soon. I just have a few questions on their behalf. My response to them every single time was, if your student is that busy now, how busy are they going to be with graduate school? And I'm going to spare them by not letting the program director know that mom is reaching out to me right now. You have to take responsibility for asking those questions. And I can guarantee you, mom and dad are going to be involved, but that's a relationship you need to keep out of the graduate process, the graduate admissions and enrollment process. And believe me, being a mom, I get it. I told you I'm a 13-year-old. I'm already pushing for him to go to UCF now for paintball, but I also understand that, there's a line I can't cross. So make sure that you are owning this relationship, you're owning your research, that you are doing all of that ahead of time, and that you're not just expecting to be spoon-fed the information. That's going to build the relationship and that's going to build the collaboration before you ever get admitted to a program. So all of this information is here. If you don't get the scores you want, if you don't have the GPA you want, consider retaking a course. Asking the admissions committees, hey, if my GPA isn't where you want it, what can I do? Would there be an additional letter of recommendation? Have the conversation. Okay, so here's some tips and strategies. We're about at 11:30. Not going to read this to you. This is stuff I kind of went over already. I'm going to give you some free materials anyway. So just hang on with me so that you have that information. What I want to do now is I want to go over the individual sections of the GRE. Now, this is not a deep dive. This is just truly skimming the surface because I want you to just understand what each section consists of. Again, we're starting with the analytical writing because yes, it always comes first. I could hear you. I could hear you actually thinking that. So, the analytical writing section evaluates your critical thinking and your writing skills. So, can you articulate and support complex ideas? Can you construct and evaluate arguments? And can you sustain a focused and coherent discussion? This is an authentic writing sample. Now, I said a word there that you really need to hear. I said the word authentic. Because of the rise of Gen AI and large language learning models, which I love and use every single day, one of the benefits of the analytical writing section is that it can't be coached, it can't be pre-written. There's no chat GPT, there's no Grammarly, there's absolutely no tools that you can use than just preparation. When you are taking a GRE, you're using our virtual privacy network. So this serves as an authentic writing sample for graduate schools. This helps them to better understand your writing capabilities. So that's one of the reasons why they really take this seriously. Even if writing isn't a huge component of your graduate program, guarantee you they're going to look at it and they're going to think about it because even if you're in a program that doesn't do a lot of writing, you're going to do writing in graduate school, y'all. There's no doubt about it. Regardless of your program, you're going to write. Look at McKenna. McKenna's like, yes, bobblehead, right? It's definitely going to happen. So when you look at the analytical writing, it's going to be one timed essay task, and it's going to be analyzing an issue. So what's going to happen is when you open up that screen, you're going to be given an issue. We call it a prompt. It's going to be an issue that is generated by the system, and then you're going to be given instructions. And those instructions will tell you to develop an argument for reasons that support whatever position you take about that issue. So when it comes to preparing for it and how it's evaluated, here's a few tips. Number one is the instructions will leave it open to your opinion. It's not going to say to be for or against the issue. That is completely up to you. So if you're writing your information, you get to choose whether you are for the issue when you're analyzing it or you're against the issue. Neither one is a right or a wrong answer. They're not evaluating your essay for your opinion there. What they're looking at is can you articulate your opinion and then follow through with it? Like what is the substance behind why you're choosing that stance or that situation? They're also looking to see can you follow the instructions. So there's a subset of instructions that tell you a little bit about how they want you to reply. So you have to read the prompt, you have to read the instructions, and then you reply. I cannot tell you how important it is with the GRE to read all the instructions. I know we've been hearing that since elementary school, but they're so complex in the instructions themselves that if you don't take the time to read and understand what's being asked of you, you might miss something that's really critical. So when the human is scoring your essay, they're looking at did they respond to the issue and did they follow the task at hand? Did they consider all the complexities of the issue? Were they organized? So if you're testing at home, you'll get like a white paper where you can write out your thoughts. If you're a bullet point, if you're a brainstormer, that's completely up to you. If you see the last one on there, they're also going to make sure that you can control the elements of standard written English. They understand you have 30 minutes to complete this. So they're looking for a polished first to second draft. They understand this is only 30 minutes to come up with your entire idea and to be able to type this out on the computer. So they very much recognize that there might be a grammatical error here, a typo or spelling there. That's not going to count against you, but something where they can barely read it or there's a ton of grammatical errors, it will definitely hurt. So, how can you prepare? Be familiar with it, and review. So if you look in the blue side, do you see the analytical writing overview, the hyperlink up top? We actually post every single prompt that will could ever be on the GRE. There's a couple hundred, if not 1,000 of them, but I would highly recommend taking a look at those because any one of those could be what would be on the GRE and look at them and start asking yourself, okay, how would I answer this if I were being timed? And then start practicing on your own. That will really help you to be prepared. Okay, so now let's take a look at verbal reasoning. So, with verbal reasoning, this section evaluates your ability to understand what you read, how you apply reasoning skills. There is a lot of like verbal definitions and how words associate with one another, but it is a lot about reading comprehension, understanding conclusions, understanding an author's intent, inferencing what the author said. So when you look at this section, there are three different question types. There's reading comprehension. So you'll be given a passage, and within this passage, you're going to be asked a series of questions. You're going to be asked about what is the author's theme? What is the author conveying? There's going to be some assumptions made. From reading this passage, I assume X, Y, and Z, and you have to agree or disagree that that is what the author is saying. There's going to be some text completion where you have to know a lot about vocabulary and being able to insert words that would fit and complete a sentence. And then there's sentence equivalence. Sentence equivalence is you'll be able to insert words that, if read, could have the same meaning. So there's a lot of vocabulary here. There's a lot of the reading comprehension. A lot of students ask me, like, for the reading comprehension, what are they looking for? So I did add this in. Not going to read the whole thing, just so that you understand what they're looking for. And under reading comprehension, there are three different types of questions. There is multiple choice, select one or more, and then select in passage, which is where you would actually highlight. So how do you prepare for it? This is the number one question, right? Believe it or not, textbooks don't help prepare you, and neither do like Colleen Hoover books, right? So whatever it is you're reading right now is not going to prepare you, but you really want to try to expand to read things like specialized academic journals, things you may not read, like Scientific American, the London Review of Books. Those have the complex vocabulary and information that perhaps you don't read right now. But as you're reading those passages, stop and think, okay, if I don't know this word, what is another word I could associate with it that would help make sense in this situation? Or look it up. We all have cell phones, right? Look it up and try and learn what that word is and try to use it. Use it so that you become comfortable with it because that is the level of complexity that a lot of the vocab will have in this particular section. And there are some flashcards that we offer at ETS, but let me give you all the free information first before you think about buying anything. Okay, keeping ahead, we are going to look at quantitative. I know McKenna's looking at the clock. I am too. There's a whole lot of information. We're almost wrapped up. Okay, so when we get to the quantitative, this is the math section, right? So this is the ability to assess your quantitative information just using mathematical models. So it's going to really focus on these four areas, right? Arithmetic, which is basically elementary math, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. So if you look under arithmetic, this is, people think that, so the GRE does have complex math on it, and I'm going to show you the math. But the thing that gets people sometimes is the math that they haven't had in a really long time. Point here, my husband and I are helping our son build an outdoor pond. Do you know how long it took the two of us without our son to figure out the size of a pond tarp we needed because we hadn't done like volume and area in so long. Like we were fighting over what size of a pond tarp we needed. I'm like, isn't it length times width times? Like, I don't remember anymore. It was a hilarious conversation, but it's just things that maybe you haven't done in a while. So if you think about the arithmetic part, it's estimation, number line, it's percent ratio and rates, things maybe you're not using right now. Algebra, functions, a little bit of, we'll go over the geometry here, but it's solving equations and inequalities, right? Modeling, adding, anytime numbers and letters get into math together, how that feels. There's a little bit of geometry here. So geometric figures, lines, circles. That's where this is where we struggled, right? Your your area, your perimeter, your volumes, things maybe you haven't done in a while. And then you have your data analysis, which might be something that you've done a little bit more recently. So your frequency distributions, your mean, median, and mode, your probabilities, those sorts of things. So when you think about the quantitative section, these are the types of question types that you'll receive. There's multiple choice, select one. Multiple choice, select one or more. There's quantitative comparison, which is just comparing the two numbers to see which one is correct. And then actual numeric entry, where you are solving the equation and then typing in the number. So let's talk about like the calculator, and then we're going to talk about how you can actually prepare for this section. So the on-screen calculator, the number one, without all the bullet points here, you won't need it for every single question. So if you're at a test center, they're going to give you scratch paper. And if you're at home, you'll have scratch paper or a whiteboard. You can use whatever tool you need. But if you want the calculator, it's definitely there for you. It's a very simplified calculator. It's not a scientific calculator because you don't need a scientific calculator. It respects the order of operations. It's not a complex sort of calculator. But if it's something you want to use, it's definitely there for you. You'll see, I think it's like one, two, three, four, like the fourth, fifth bullet point down. Most questions don't require difficult computations. So only use it when needed. A lot of the times you can estimate, and some of the questions will say actually estimate the response. So this again is an example of making sure that you read the directions carefully. So when it comes to strategies, there's a lot of different strategies to help you be successful with this section. What I find the most helpful is the hyperlink here at the bottom. So when you look at the hyperlink, it's going to give you definitions to maybe some of the mathematical terms that maybe you haven't used in a while. I could have used that with my husband a couple of weeks ago, forgot about it. But it's going to talk about when they say estimate, what are they talking about with estimate? Like, what does it mean when they say estimate X, Y, and Z? When they're talking about geometric patterns for the GRE, what do they mean for geometric patterns? Making sure that you're speaking the same language as the test itself. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can use to help you become successful in this section. Okay, so how can you prepare? So plan, please plan. So most students plan at least 2 months before. And that's because the day you test, you will receive your unofficial verbal and quant scores. So you'll know kind of where those are. And you'll know at that time if you're going to want to retest or if you like those and they're set in stone. So if you're applying for a program that maybe has an application deadline of November 15th, you certainly don't want to wait until November 1st, right? You want to back it up and say, okay, I want to apply maybe in September. So I need to start studying in what? June? All right. So so you really want to like work backwards. That's the way I always recommend. Take the time. We have practice tests that are free. I'm going to show you all that information. Come up with a study plan. The students that I work with that are the most successful approach the GRE like they would a class. They add it to their schedule a couple of days a week. Mondays and Wednesdays for an hour, I'm going to study the quant, I'm going to study the verbal. The way that they do that is they use the free test prep. Please, please, please use the free test prep before you go out and buy anything. There's a ton of test prep companies out there. I can't verify where they get their test prep materials, but I guarantee you a lot of them just kind of pilfer them from our website and just sell them to you. And that's they can do whatever they want to do, but we give it to you for free anyway. So if you're thinking about taking the GRE, start here. Please start here. Use the free information. There's a test preview tool that's free that you can see, like actually simulate the experience. There's some online practice tests that are free, two of them, that you can go through the entire process. There's a whole 100-page math refresher. Doesn't that sound fun? You can go through this 100-page math refresher. There's all kinds of information here at this link on GRE Prepare. Then, if you think that you want more information, then if you decide you want to buy something, feel free, but please don't start out purchasing anything because I guarantee you, your library, career services, something on campus, they've probably already purchased a lot of this information and you can check it out anyway. So don't worry about doing that. Also, if you create an ETS account, it's just ets.org mygre. You don't have to register for the GRE, but just by creating an ETS account, you get this dashboard. And with this dashboard, you get access to all kinds of free test prep. And when we run discounts on the GRE and discounts on test prep and certain types of offers, you'll start receiving that information. So again, if you just go to ETS GRE and set up an ETS account, you'll have all kinds of access. And one of the things I love too, do you remember way early on, you're hanging in there well, when I talked about maybe you needed extra time for the test or you needed a break? That's called an accessibility or an accommodation. Right here, if you are a test taker with a disability or health related need, you can actually apply for an accommodation. So you would need to do that about a month before you test, but you can apply to get a longer testing time, or maybe you wear like a hearing device and you need to make sure that the test proctor knows that. Maybe there's another accommodation that you need. You can apply for that here. This is also where you would be able to view your scores after you take the GRE or send additional score reports. So there's a lot of information that can be found in your ETS account, and you don't even have to take the GRE right away, but that at least opens up the door and gives you access to so many more materials. And again, keeping those deadlines in mind. Now, there is a free little GRE mini quiz. I think it's fun. It's just fun to kind of like test yourself. So it's ets.org/GRE/quiz. It's free. It's just it's a 10 question mini quiz, five verbal, five quant. You can take it in just a matter of minutes. You can get an idea of what the complexity of the questions are like on the GRE. Best part is you get a score. Try it out. I mean, I took it and I was pretty surprised. Like I knew what I was getting on the verbal, the quantitative. As y'all can tell, I was a liberal artist. Didn't surprise me one bit. And I was like, okay, glad I took this years ago because I would definitely have to study again if I were going to take it again, and that's okay. But it is a mini quiz. It's really great, and it's something that's free, and it would just be a good way to test your skills. It's like a benchmark to see where you are, and you can take it as many times as you want. So feel free to take that. There's also a way whenever you set up your ETS account, it's going to ask you if you want to opt into what's called the Graduate Search Service. I highly recommend that you opt into this service because the Graduate Search Service is a platform that graduate programs, so business, law, other graduate programs, they use this service to find and recruit graduate students. Grad school is very different than undergrad. When you were in undergrad, you probably received postcards and phone calls and letters from schools you didn't even know existed. You're like, I've never heard of this school before, and they all went in your trash. But grad school's different. You don't necessarily, maybe on campus, you know, of the programs there, but you're not necessarily getting information from programs outside of your own campus. So this is a great way to expand your view and expand what is out there for you, whether it's on campus or if it's in your state or outside of your state. By opting in, you fill out a profile of your undergraduate experience and kind of what you're considering for grad school. Programs go in and they pull a list of information based upon what they're considering good fits for their programs, based upon majors, based upon all kinds of information. And then they send you emails. And the emails may be about scholarships, maybe about financial aid, maybe about open houses, application materials. It's all completely free. Like there's no obligation that you have to go to that school. But it's kind of nice because you start hearing from schools and you start hearing from programs. What I love about it is you start hearing about programs you may not have known existed. There's a lot of PhD programs right now that are bypassing the masters. So you can go directly from an undergraduate to a PhD program and you may not even know it. So this is a really good opportunity that if you wanted to do that, you could. And that's how you sign up. Finally, before I turn it over to McKenna for questions, in January of every year, we open up ETS scholarships. So y'all may not know this. Y'all know us for GRE, but ETS is a much bigger company than just the GRE. We work in K through 12, so we work in higher education for younger children. We work in workforce. We work in language assessment. But part of what we do is we give back in scholarships. So these are three scholarships. They're annual awards. One's for 15,000, another for 15, and one's for 20,000. And these are open to anyone. You can see the link here on the screen. You just have to read and make sure you fill out the criteria, and then you submit the scholarship. I can tell you, luckily, a student from the state of Florida has won at least one of these every single year. And I take that as a pride point because I share these far and wide. Every single, like December is when I start shooting them out to career services. And I'm like, please share this with students. So I take a lot of pride in that students from the state of Florida are winning these. But make sure this is something that you're considering, something that you're looking at. There's also the GRE fee reduction program. So for those of you who don't know, we do offer 50% off of taking the GRE. There's different criteria that you have to meet, but you just go to this link here. And if you qualify, you can take the GRE, which is normally $220. You can take it for $110 and you get an additional $100 of free test prep. I said I was almost done, McKenna. I'm so sorry. I think I am done now. Yes. And finally is there's a discount going on right now. Now, I won't be honest, it ends Sunday, but I wanted to share it. It's called GRE Fall 15. It gives you 50% off digital prep and other things on Sunday. But if you follow our email or our website at all, they're offering different things every single week. And if you sign up for an ETS account, you get emails about GRE test prep and vouchers off of GRE. That's really your best bet. So, McKenna, I'll stop. I know we're getting short on time and turn it over to you for questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Dawn. That was an awesome presentation and with super helpful information. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
One of our questions is, are you able to take the GRE as many times as you want?
Great question. You can take the GRE 5 times a year, but you have to space it out at 21 days. Now, I mentioned 2 is the average for students in the US. Students outside the US, the average is 3.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The next question is there any recommended minimum word count? I believe this is for the analytical writing
Oh,
portion.
great question. No, there is not. There's not a minimum or maximum word count on analytical writing. You can take as little or as many words as you want, but there is no word count to analytical writing. You just have to stay within the 30-minute time frame.
So thank you so much. I think you touched on this one a little bit, but maybe if you could please elaborate a little bit more. To get a good score, how many weeks slash months in advance do you think we should start studying?
That one's so tricky. That's a great question. Here's what I can share with you is on average, students who have done well, and the reason why we know they've done well is because we do a student survey at the end of the GRE. So after the GRE is finished, we survey students. Students can submit the survey back to us, and we can take that survey information. We can look at their scores, so we can be like, okay, the students who filled out the survey, who did moderately well, this is how they responded. So there was a slide I showed y'all earlier, I know, in the multitude of slides, right? Let me see if I can go back and find it. On average, we say, it's the planning slide, 2 months. And that is because, is this the one I said? Yeah. So we say 2 months for prepping and for planning. Um, I can tell you the students who take time do much better, but only 91% of students in the US actually do any test prep at all. There's a very low percentage of students that do jump into the GRE kind of cold. I was one of those years and years and years ago, and I regretted it. Um, but if you take a couple of months, but you really have to decide how you're going to study. I don't know what your study habits are. If your study habits are to do like I recommended as a class, like every Monday, every Wednesday for an hour, I'm going to study particular sections, then you're going to be fine. What I don't recommend is cramming. I don't recommend, 2 weeks prior to you taking it, just sitting down and cramming and cramming. I will tell you that it's very different than um, probably like a comprehensive test that you've ever taken. That's why I recommend taking the mini quiz, or even better, taking the online practice tests here. Because if you take the online practice test, it's going to simulate the actual test. It's going to be in a timed setting, and it's going to provide scores. So by taking that timed test after you've studied for a little bit, you're going to better understand like where your strengths and weaknesses are, and that's going to help you to study. So you're going to be like, oh, okay, I did much better on this than I thought I was going to. So now what I can do is spend a little extra time on this particular section. So study all the free materials. If I were doing a step, I would do the GRE free mini quiz first. I would look at all the free test prep materials. I'd spend about a month on the free test prep. I would set myself up like if I were doing a class. I would take like one of the timed online practice tests. I would use that as a benchmark to say, okay, where am I? Spend a couple of more weeks figuring that out. I'd take another time practice test. Like I would really time myself out, and then you'll be golden.
Yes, thank you so much for that advice. That is extremely helpful to help students prepare. So thank you. The next question was, a student wanted to clarify regarding to the free test preparation. Are there available resources on the GRE website? There was a student who just couldn't find some free preparations.
Yeah,
Only
tell them to go to this link. Go ets.org/GRE/prepare. That's the best link to go to.
Thank you so much for that. Thank
Mhm.
you. All right, another follow-up question was for the writing portion, since there isn't a minimum word count, do you
Mhm.
have a recommendation on an amount that is a good average?
Absolutely not. And here's why. Um, don't worry about word count, worry about content. Like word count is not important. If you go back to how they're evaluated, there's nothing on here about word count at all. It's all about, did you respond to the prompt, like the question that's being asked, and did you follow the instructions? So as long as you are reading the prompt itself and as long as you're following the instructions, I know you're used to word count because that's kind of the world you're living in right now. You can actually just throw that completely out the window, free yourself of it. Like just free yourself of even thinking about word count. Take as much or as little as you need to feel like you have gotten your point across and that you have supported whatever it is. Once you go to this overview right here and you see all the different examples, all the different prompts, then you'll be like, oh, okay, now I get it. I would have a lot to say about that, or oh my goodness, I wouldn't have as much to say about that. So really don't worry about the word count as much. I know it's easy for me to say, but try not to let that be something that gets stuck in your head because it honestly does not factor in one way or the other. This is the only thing that factors in, and that is, are you responding to the task? Are you considering the complexities? Are you actually answering the prompt? Like there is an issue, and that issue will be very specific. Are you talking about that specific prompt? And don't even worry about word count.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Another question is, if I were a student who needed accommodations, how early in advance should I apply or reach out for accommodations, and what is that process like?
That's a great question. So, if you need accommodations, the first thing to do is to fill out your ETS account. So that's where you would go to ets.org, GRE, and there's an ETS account that you fill out. And then you get this home page. And then you click here on GRE accommodation. You need to fill out your accommodation about a month before you decide to test. And it's just a form. And the form is going to ask your information, right? The information like who you are, that type of information, what type of accommodation you're applying for. Are you applying for more time? Are you applying for, are you hearing disabled? Are you visually disabled? Like, do you need something like a different type of screen? Do you have a visual impairment that you need different specifications on screen in order to test on screen? So it's going to ask you kind of what you're looking for, and then it's going to ask you why you need that information. So it's going to kind of ask you some validation questions. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not going to, they're not going to approve an accommodation just because you say, I would like more time just because I'm stressed out. They're not going to give you an accommodation for that. There really has to be a disability or a health related need. It can't just be because you're needing a break or you're wanting a break. So my suggestion is when you get your account here, go ahead and click on it and look over the form because there has to be a valid reason behind why you're asking for whatever it is you're asking for, whether it's extra time or a break or whatever that is. Um, and they may ask for documentation of it. It just kind of depends on the situation and what you're asking for. But I would give yourself at least a month because you want to make sure that the approval process goes through and the accommodation gets added to your test registration.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining the accommodation request and process.
Of
Thank
course.
you. One more question. When you do complete your GRE test, how many
Mhm.
schools do you get to send your scores to for free?
Ooh, that's a good question. I did not go into that, but I will tell y'all, especially since y'all are hanging in here with me, there's a whole appendix at the end of this slide deck that talks about what to expect, what your unofficial scores look like, how to select schools to send your scores to, what your sample score report looks like. It's just we run out of time and I can't get through everything. But what I will tell you is as soon as you finish testing and you view your unofficial scores, you can send 4 free score reports to whatever programs you want. Now, if you decide you want more than 4, you can send additional score reports later, but they are about $35 if you decide to send them later at any time. But as soon as you finish testing, it's going to ask you this question like what schools, and you just type it in. Like you just hit country, USA, if that's where you're wanting to go, state, and search. You don't have to have the institution code, but let's say you select Florida, then it's going to give you the list of all the different schools. And then the next one would be all the individual programs. So if there was like a PT program or an engineering program, they would be there. And then the actual official scores are about 7 to 10 days after you finish your test. Your official scores will be in your ETS account, and then we electronically release those official scores to the school as well. And this is a sample of what your school report looks like. So in this sample, this individual, you will have a picture. This individual took the test multiple times. So if you take the test multiple times and you want the school to see multiple scores, you can. Then you can release both scores, or you can just release whatever score you wish. Now, I will tell you, schools want to see if you take the test more than once because they're looking for growth. They're looking to see, did this student do better? Are they trying? Just like they do on transcripts where they're looking for rigor. They're looking to see if you took it multiple times. They don't hold it against you. They're looking to see if you took it multiple times. But I know we're over on time. I'm so sorry. I know we're 4 minutes over. So, McKenna, my email address is on the very first screen on here, and I will send this out. So if you all have questions, you're welcome to email me, and I'll do my very best to respond to whatever I possibly can for the group. But out of respect of everybody's time, I don't want to keep you guys I'm happy to stay on if there are additional questions. You're my only meeting right now, but I also don't want to make people feel obligated to stay.
Oh, Dawn, thank you so much for an amazing presentation today. This was so helpful and I've previously gone through the process and I wish I had something like this and I hope everyone took notes and took this seriously and thank you so much for your kindness and energy through this presentation. That was super fun and engaging. So
Good, I'm
thank you
glad.
so much. And we did have one more question. If
Sure.
I did share your email in the chat, are you able to share the slides with us so
Yes,
AAP can share them to the students that were here?
absolutely. Happy to do it. I'll send it as soon as we get done here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Um,
You're welcome.
Thank you, students, all for joining as well. And if you could please fill out the post-event survey. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to AAP. I listed the email and also the AAP's link tree for more information. But again, thank you all so much for joining Welcome Wednesday. And please all say thank you to Dawn. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.